In Climate Watch, a town in the middle of a red state is an unexpected leader in renewable energy. According to the Labor Department, solar panel and wind turbine technicians are the two fastest growing careers in the country, and Texas is where you'll find most of those jobs.
The traditionally conservative state is leading the way for energy conservation across the U.S. Steve Inskeep, co-host of NPR's Morning Edition, and up first has more.
How many miles of wind turbines are we walking through here?
From the furthest point out on the project to the furthest point out back there is right about 13 miles.
Dave Watkins oversees this wind farm. It's on Route 66, exactly halfway between LA and Chicago. Bikers taking road trips on this historic highway rumble past one new wind farm after another.
I heard someone in town say once that this particular area doesn't have a lot of oil, doesn't have a lot of water, but the one thing it does have is wind.
Which means a job for Wesley House.
Look at this. Best office in the world.
He used to work on oil rigs.
To me, this is more stable.
Oh, it's beautiful.
With oil, it's either a hit or miss.
A few years ago, it was impractical to generate power in this remote spot. Then Texas spent $7 billion on power lines connecting windy North and West Texas with cities south and east. It happened under Energy Secretary Rick Perry, who was governor then.
We can deliver power to San Antonio, Dallas, Houston, you name it.
Where the people are.
Yep.
Including the city that uses almost entirely renewable power. It is 501 miles from Adrian, Texas, where the wind turbines are, down to Georgetown, Texas, where the power is going. We've been driving all afternoon through the Permian Basin in the center of Texas, and all along the way we've been passing oil pump jacks from an older economy and wind turbines from a new economy. When we arrived in Georgetown, people told us coal plants kept the lights on for generations.
I think it's kind of cool. We have all this history, but also we're one of the leading cities when it comes to innovation in the country.
Then Republican Mayor Dale Ross concluded the market was changing. Were you always a Republican?
Always a Republican.
You grew up in a Republican family?
I did.
Who's your favorite president?
President Reagan.
Unlike many Republicans, Ross accepts climate science. He supports clean power so much, he bought an electric motorcycle. But Ross says he approved wind and solar because it's affordable.
This was first and foremost a business decision. And if you win the business argument, then you're going to win the environmental argument.
Have the facts been changing? 10 years ago, 20 years ago, wind or solar would have been more expensive, right?
That's true, but now the facts are changing. It's a totally different landscape out there. Let me tell you, in the state of Texas since January 1st, 4 coal plants have closed. This is the economics of the matter. You buy wind and solar for, say, $18 a megawatt. You buy coal for $25. You have that choice. Which one are you going to buy?
So you're thinking about the art of the deal.
The art of the deal. I might be able to teach Mr. Trump something when it comes to renewable energy. All he has to do is invite me, and I'll come to the White House. We can have a great discussion.
Very clean coal.
The president has hailed a few new coal jobs.
The miners go back to work.
But has not erased coal's disadvantage against natural gas and renewables.
My overall impression is that President Trump has been able to do less damage than I feared that he would.
Former Vice President Al Gore.
Howdy.
Howdy, Mr. Vice President.
How are you, Mr. Mayor?
Featured Georgetown's mayor in one of his climate documentaries.
Market forces are moving the entire energy marketplace toward renewable energy. I'm hoping they'll follow the lead of Dale Ross rather than Donald Trump.
Renewable energy has continued growing since Trump's election, even in Texas, the conservative home of Trump's energy secretary. So even though Rick Perry is the energy secretary for President Trump, who's all about coal,
right,
he was in some way a visionary on wind.
He was, and without his leadership, we wouldn't be having renewable energy here. Now, he's shying away from that, and I need to be his PR guy. But maybe he doesn't want to take credit for it because his boss is a big coal guy.
Steve Inskeep is here now to talk more about how some Texas leaders are going green. Great to meet you.
Glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
So let's talk about how this city, in the middle of a conservative state, decided to become the leader in renewable energy.
Well, you hear the mayor make the argument in what can sound like a conservative way. You believe in climate science, you don't believe in climate science, whatever, you can believe in saving money. And Dale Ross argued successfully that he could get a 20-year contract at the same price for wind energy for this city, while natural gas or coal or whatever might go up, might go down, and that the city would save money. He's made this financial argument that also makes people feel good, certainly makes him feel good because he buys climate science.
Right. And so how has it impacted the people who are living in the community? What changes have they noticed?
The first thing to notice is there's no difference. The lights are on. That's it. Now, we should say that the power, when we say 100% renewable energy for this city, that is true at most times on most days. If it's a super hot day or if the wind doesn't blow, they may need a little bit of help from traditional sources. So they're not totally independent of that traditional power grid, but wind is where they're buying it, and they have a solar farm that they have a contract with that's beginning shortly.
So that will supplement whenever there's a shortfall.
Exactly. They'll have another opportunity to get renewable.
Right.
How instrumental was Rick Perry in getting this accomplished?
This is one of the most interesting things. Rick Perry was governor of Texas, as we heard, for 14 years, and so he's the guy who signed the legislation that made it possible for Texas to expand its power grid into these remote places. When you look at a map, the really windy places are the Texas Panhandle, where we were looking at a wind farm, or far in West Texas, but most of the people are around Dallas, Houston, Austin. Georgetown is outside of Austin. You need to connect them. This is something that China has done on a huge scale with huge power grids connecting to windier areas and sunny areas, and this is now something that Texas has done on a pretty huge scale as well.
So does that mean that other small towns will be coming online? It's easier for them now?
They have an opportunity to do that. Denton, Texas, which is a suburb of Dallas and a pretty big city in its own right, is on its way to trying for 100% renewable energy in a very similar way to Georgetown. There are other places. Dallas gets a lot of renewable energy. Houston, its government has promoted renewable energy. There are places where this is growing, and Texas, which is a really big state, gets overall about 15% of its energy from renewable sources right now, a lot more than a few years ago.
It's fascinating.
It is indeed, and when you point out that China is doing this on a large scale and the United States is not, with President Trump campaigned on bringing the coal industry back.
Right, and this is Trump country.
This is Trump country.
It's Trump country. It is a very, very red state, but it is a place where a lot of things are going on at once. Politically, a lot of things are going on at once, and in terms of the energy market, a lot of things are going on. And the reality is that right now, what's happening in wind and solar is a lot bigger than anything that's happening in coal. Last year, I went to a county in Pennsylvania where a coal mine was opening. They were very excited. President Trump was very supportive. It was up to maybe 100 new jobs. It's just not a lot of jobs that are there. There are a lot of jobs available as wind farm technicians, and there's a big future seen for that, as well as a huge future, by the way, for natural gas, which has grown far more than renewables and is a much bigger part of this story than either renewables or coal at this point.
That's what I wondered, when I asked you about the impact on the community, I wondered if jobs was going to be one of them.
Yeah, jobs, although of course the jobs are where the wind is.
Right,
they're out in these remote or more remote areas. This is outside of Amarillo, the wind farm that has a contract with Georgetown 501 miles away. But there are jobs. It's not millions of jobs, but it's jobs. And it's manufacturing jobs, we should mention, making wind turbines, making the components, as well as servicing them.
Oh, that's very good. Very interesting.
Really fascinating stuff.
Steve Inskeep, thank you very much.
Oh, glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation.